Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're painting Age of Sigmar Liberator. We'll be painting him in the colours of the Hallowed Knights, as I'm not all that much of a fan of the overly gold colours of the Hammers of Sigmar. I think it's just too much gold. So I'm going to stick with the Hallowed Knights. First up, we apply Dragonhof Nightshade over a prime of Lead Belcher. You don't paint it on to the shoulder pads, as we're going to base coat them a different colour later on, and not putting the shade on it means we don't have to wait for it to dry. Make sure you get it into the recesses on the armour. If it starts to pool too much, you can just dry off your brush and use it to wick away any excessive pools. Now while the shade is drying, we're going to base coat all the gold metallic areas with Retributor armour. You may need to water it down a tiny bit and apply 2 tin multiple coats. There's gold on his shoulder pads, the decorative spiky emblem on his helmet, the pommels on his weapons, and his shield. The scales on the fabric area are left with the base coat of Lead Belcher and simply given a wash of Null oil. Next up is a tinned down coat of Cantor Blue. This is applied to his shield, the fabric between his legs and his shoulder pads. Tin multiple coats will be required to get as smooth as possible finish. Don't forget to get the rear of the fabric with the blue as well. It's easy to forget. Here we touch up the shield emblem with a tin coat of Lead Belcher. The details on the emblem of the shield are quite shallow, so spilling over onto the blue is easy, so just take your time and go as slow and smooth as you can. Next we apply a coat of Screamer Pink over this area and his weapon handles. Don't forget to put the Screamer Pink on his sword as well. Now we apply Null Oil to the head of his hammer and all the Screamer Pink areas. A coat of Reichland Flesh Shade is now applied to all the gold trim areas. While the shades are drying, a base coat of Wraithbone can be applied to the parchment hanging from his belt. Later we'll be applying a coat of Skeleton Horde contrast paint over this base coat. Next step is to apply a very light dry brush of Pink Horror over the Screamer Pink areas. Just be sure that the Null Oil has dried already. Here we apply an edge highlight of Altioch Blue to all the blue areas. When edge highlighting, it's very important to control the amount of paint on your brush and just simply use the edge and not the tip to draw smooth lines on the edges. Edge highlighting can be time consuming, but there isn't too much to do on this model. Here we apply the Skeleton Horde contrast paint after giving the Wraithbone plenty of time to dry. It's important when using contrast paints that they don't pool too much, in a similar way to shades. I really like the effect that Skeleton Horde gives. It is definitely one of my favourite contrast paints. Here we apply a dry brush of Ironbreaker over all the gold areas. Now you don't have to do it this way, you can layer in a lighter gold, but I prefer the weathered look. It's a personal choice really. When dry brushing, you just apply a small amount of paint to your brush, work it into the bristles on a piece of tissue paper, and then wipe off as much as you can in a back and forward and then circular motion. You can always test it on the edge of the base to see how much paint you'll be depositing with each brush, because if you apply too much it can be a pain to go back and tidy it up again. Next up we take the iron breaker again, only this time we're using a medium layer brush and layering it onto the raised areas on the armour. So you're keeping the shade in the recesses. Where you apply this and how much of it you want to apply is entirely up to yourself. Most of the raised areas are sufficiently raised that it's easy enough to get at them. Next up we use Stormhost Silver. It's painted onto his helmet and used to edge highlight some parts of the armour. Only the extreme edges receive a coat of the Stormhost Silver, and we use the same edge of the brush method that we used on the blue. It's important to also edge highlight the hammer using the same technique. This is very easy as the edges are sharp and they're easy to get to. Just use the side of the brush and control the amount of paint you have on it. Off camera I painted his belt Abaddon black. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thank you.